Want to use a PGR in your cereals but have no time for a separate pass? Manipulator PGR can be applied as early as one tiller. Just add it to your herbicide to reduce lodging, increase harvest efficiency, and maximize yields. Talk to your retailer for more info and to confirm acceptable tank mixes.
Sean Haney here with RealAgriculture.com and Real Ag Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. We're going to talk about the water situation in Southern Alberta. I know a lot of you have been asking me about it. And I thought, well, let's get some facts. We're joined right now by David Westwood, his general manager with the SMRID. David, great to have you on the show.
Great to be with you this morning, Sean.
Okay, let's start off before we get into kind of what's happening. Give us some context here for a lot of our audience outside of Southern Alberta. SMRID, I believe, is the biggest irrigation district in the region, but give us some more details on what we're talking about here.
Sure thing, Sean. Actually, the SMRID is the largest irrigation district, not only in Alberta and not only in Canada, but actually in North America now, based on the metric that we use it to judge it by of actual acres being irrigated. So the SMRID irrigates annually right around just over 500,000 acres of land situated just a little bit south of Lethbridge, Alberta, and we pretty much follow the Highway 3 corridor south of the Oldman River all the way to Medicine Hat, Alberta.
This year, of course, again, dealing with pretty extensive drought bias. This is numerous years of this. We'll be going back probably a month ago now. The SMRID put out its water allocation for the year, a significant reduction in the more traditional allocation of water. Talk about what led to that decision and how you ended up at about 8 inches.
Okay. Yeah, that's for sure. That's what we've set our allocation at for the 2024 irrigation season, at least to start the season. We'll obviously see if that changes in a positive way, if we get some meaningful precipitation at some point during this upcoming irrigation season. It really was led by a couple of things. We started discussions with the province early in the new year, and it was basically everybody from the Red Deer River Basin south. The province recognized that we were heading into or had been experiencing drought conditions going back to the last year or two. If you remember, 2021 was a hot heat dome summer. 2022, we got some better precipitation. And then 2023, last year, of course, we had some serious drought conditions, and mainly because temperatures were hot early this time of year, end of August, early May. We had some high temperatures. I remember the May long weekend. That's just before the Memorial Day weekend for your U.S. listeners. So around that May 20th, 18th to 20th, I remember we had 30 degrees Celsius temperatures here in Southern Alberta. That's very uncommon for that time of year, but had been a couple of weeks of that kind of heat leading into the May long weekend. So irrigation demand was really, really high right out of the beginning of the season, and then we did not get any meaningful rainfall until smatterings in August. We basically were dry all of June and July, and that's very uncommon. In Southern Alberta gets most of its precipitation, albeit low compared to other parts of the country. We are semi-arid, but the majority of it arrives in June, and we really didn't get any. We just didn't get any precipitation in June of 2023. All those factors led to low reservoir storage in all of the reservoirs in Southern Alberta, not just within my district, the SMRID, but within other irrigation districts and in the headworks districts owned and operated by the province. And then we did not get any significant snowpack, particularly in the southern part. And that's where the majority of our watershed comes from, is melting snow in the Rocky Mountains. And we had a low snowpack year. So combined with last year's storage that was depleted due to the hot summer last year, we really went into the season with low water supply. And that really led to these discussions, which ultimately we signed some water sharing memorandums of understanding, as they're officially called, amongst users in 4 sub-basins in Southern Alberta of how we're going to share water this upcoming season, because we definitely have a lower supply than I would call an average year.
Are there any infrastructure deficits that have been acknowledged, or I guess in hindsight, if we had done this from a storage situation or other infrastructure pieces that would have helped us through this, this extended dry period, or is that not an issue?
It's hard, hindsight's always 20/20, but
Yeah.
Definitely not the operation of the existing infrastructure. What has come out of this focus on this latest drought cycle, which is probably, Sean, I would say from a Southern Alberta, at least within our region and our district, this is the most acute drought cycle we've seen since the drought of 2001. So that's over 20 years ago. But we have looked at a lot of historical information, and these kind of drought cycles are not uncommon in Southern Alberta. When you go back the last, within the last 100 years, but we've looked at data going back over 900 years, and you see cycles which we see periods of drought and then periods what we would call wetter cycles, at least by Southern Alberta standards.
Yeah.
I think this one's gaining a lot of media attention for some reason compared to, it could just be where the state of media is today. But we're actually in a little better shape than we are storage-wise compared to the drought of 2001, but comparable amounts of storage, comparable amounts of demand, I guess. That's probably one factor, probably more population in Alberta compared to 20 years ago, so that's leading to a little bit more demand pressure. But I think obviously one of the outcomes that we're really seeing and that the province is paying attention to now is that because virtually all of our irrigation system relies on the supply out of the Rocky Mountains, but then the effective use of conveyance and storage. And the province is starting to realize that more storage is a good thing, not just to combat drought cycles like these, but really it's more an answer even to when we get an overabundance of water and we have flood cycles and wet cycles, because larger storage would allow us to be able to prevent overland flooding and have a place for that water to go. And then also it would be able to be used when you have a drought cycle like this. So I think there's a real interest and there's discussion. I know the province has greenlit that study to look at doing a new on-stream reservoir on the Bow River and the Airmore Dam that was proposed many, many years ago. I think they're starting to take some serious looks at additional storage. One of the things that we are doing as a district, plus a couple other irrigation districts, is part of the Alberta Irrigation Modernization Program that was announced and that we partnered with the province and the Canada Infrastructure Bank back in 2021, is we are working towards expanding some of the storage with our district, which would be about a 50% expansion in our Chin Reservoir, and that's our largest reservoir within our district.
Yeah, so if we think about the kind of crops that are grown in Southern Alberta and your district and others, they do not exist without irrigation. Like,
absolutely,
irrigation critical here to the intensity of the agriculture that is in the district. So, I think of sugar beets, potatoes, corn, and others. How is this restriction impacting users' ability to grow some of those crops? Are they able to move water from one pivot to another? Potatoes where they're looking for say 17 to 19 or 20 inches of water. 8's not enough unless Mother Nature really cooperates. So how does this impact the user?
That's exactly it. We as a district, other districts have different ways how they deal with things. I know some are looking to try some different activities this year in this drought cycle, but we as a district have always allowed, excuse me, allocation transfer. And so what you will see this year is high value, higher water need crops. Once we announced our allocation, and that was really what irrigators were waiting for, they could finalize plans that they had been making all winter about what they were going to seed and how they were going to attack this season. But what we're expecting to see is, for example, an irrigator who has some higher value, higher water use crop, for example, potatoes, will look at potentially seeding maybe a little less potatoes. I also know that's a good example because there was an like abundance of supply from last season. I don't think the processes are calling for as much demand this year. So I think you'll see potentially a little less seeding on potatoes, and they might seed a little more grain or cereals that they normally would, and then they will move or transfer allocation from those lower use crops and move it to augment the 8 inches that they would want to put on a potato crop, for example.
Yeah. The other thing that different members of the audience have asked me is they're seeing the province in Alberta, federally as well, make expansion of irrigation acres a priority. Does this current situation potentially limit some of that intent for expansion going forward, or what's your position on that?
We get this question a lot. Obviously, when we entered that Alberta Irrigation Modernization Program, a big outcome for the province was expansion of irrigation and expansion of irrigation acres. They saw it as a good economic driver for the province. It's provided great GDP. It's been good payback on investment that the province has put into irrigation infrastructure over the years. So they really wanted to do that as a economic response measure coming out of COVID and things like that. Our mandate and our goal, and it always has been, each irrigation district, by the projects that we are doing under this modernization, but we've been doing for many years under various programs, is the conversion of open conveyance to underground pipeline leads to real water savings. We see it. Yeah. And we are very confident that we will be able to irrigate extra acres by using less or no more water than we currently use or have used historically. Obviously, when you get a drought cycle like this, people are asking us, well, how could you even think about expanding? And our answer is, well, we won't expand immediately right away. We'll see what happens. But over the long term, and again, going back to my earlier comment about going through different cycles, you weather through a drought cycle, but the reality of it is the water use, I think, is being much more efficiently applied. I really give irrigators a lot of credit. They do a lot of capital investment. The amount of changes, and you would know this obviously, compared to irrigation techniques 20, 30 years ago, with the move from, that wasn't that long ago, and there is a tiny bit of flood out there, but very little in southern Alberta. But the move to wheel moves, and then obviously high pressure pivots, and then down to low pressure pivots, which now into the latest technology of variable rate low pressure pivots over very specific spots as that pivot is making it circle. If it's a center pivot around the quarter section, it's quite impressive what the technology is doing of really trying to determine where the water needs to be applied, but always with the idea of not over applying and trying to be as efficient with the water as possible. We've come a long way, and I think that's also, all these things are leading to us to believing that we can irrigate a few more acres. None of us are expanding our districts by 50% or anything like that. We're marginally expanding our districts, but with an eye that we think we've got a world-class irrigation system in southern Alberta, and we think we can expand a little bit more. And in the long term, it's going to be better for not just the economy, but Alberta has taken a stance that it should be a net food provider, and Canada has a position of being a net food exporter, and we take that, I think, responsibility. I think farmers in southern Alberta take that responsibility very seriously.
Yeah, I would agree. And as somebody that grew up in, around irrigation, the move from hand moves to wheel moves, we've, died and gone to heaven. And then from wheel move, once you've done that enough times, wheel moves to just pivots, and Judd was like, "Oh my goodness, this is amazing technology." So moving pipes before school, like every good irrigation farm kid. Hey, David, this has been great. I appreciate you shedding light on the details of what's happening, and we really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.